She said it so casually, right after my son's funeral. My daughter-in-law turned to her friends and whispered, "Well, at least the new will is finalized. All mine now." That moment shattered something inside me. Not just because I had just buried my only child, but because those words weren't grief. They were relief. And I had no idea what she meant until I tried to access my son's original will and found out it had been replaced by someone who didn't even know him 5 years ago. Tell me this. If you raised a boy with your own hands, worked 2 jobs to put him through law school, helped him buy his first home, and even welcomed his wife into your family like your own daughter, then one day, after his passing, you discover she changed his will and you no longer exist in it. What would you do if you were me? Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I'm Audrey. I'm 68 years old. And this is my story. My name is Audrey Campbell. I was born in 1957 in a 2-bedroom farmhouse in rural Indiana. I wasn't handed anything easily. My father died when I was 7, and my mother, God rest her soul, raised 4 of us on her seamstress income. We didn't have much, but what we did have was earned with blistered hands and long nights. I carried that same grit into my adulthood. I married early, too early. He left before my son Nathan turned 3. I didn't chase him. I chased work instead. Cleaning houses, stitching curtains, baking pies for the Sunday market, anything to make sure Nathan had shoes that fit and books with his name in them. Nathan was my everything. He was quiet, polite, always watching me with those curious eyes. He was the kind of child who shared his lunch in elementary school and stood up when his teacher walked into the room. When he got a full scholarship to Purdue, I cried for 2 straight days. I used every dime of my savings to buy him a used Toyota so he could commute safely. And when he graduated with honors from law school, I bought a dress from the clearance rack and sat in the front row applauding like a proud fool. He made me believe my life had mattered. When Nathan met Emily, I admit I was nervous. She was polished, Ivy League. Her nails were always done and her smile never quite reached her eyes. But Nathan was enchanted. "She challenges me, Mum," he told me once, laughing. "She makes me think bigger." I nodded. I wanted him to be happy. When they got married, I gave them the house. Not rented, not sold. Gave. It was the only home Nathan had ever known, the one I worked 3 decades to keep. I moved into the converted garage out back, a humble, clean space I renovated myself. "It's temporary," Mum Nathan said, hugging me that first night, "just until we settle in." But time passed, and I stayed in the garage. Emily never brought it up. Nathan got busier with work. Then came the twins, 2 beautiful boys, Mason and Max. I became their unofficial nanny, rocking them to sleep, while Emily went back to consulting. I was always around. I cooked, I cleaned, I kissed scraped knees. But slowly, I started feeling like an accessory. Emily started introducing me to her friends as Nathan's mother who helps out. One time at a baby shower, she laughed and said, "She's basically the live-in maid, except we don't pay her." Everyone laughed. I didn't. I chalked it up to her sense of humor, or stress, or the wine. But then she started locking the pantry and labeling leftovers in the fridge with her initials. "It's just so things stay organized," she said with a shrug. Nathan never noticed. Or if he did, he said nothing. I stayed silent because I thought, this is family. Family isn't supposed to keep score. But something began shifting. I could feel it. When I'd enter a room, conversations stopped. When I'd suggest something about the boys, Emily would say, they have a mother, Audrey. Let me handle it. The worst part, Nathan seemed tired all the time, thinner, paler, always apologizing for being late, always cancelling plans with me. Once he gave me a side hug and whispered, thanks for keeping the peace. Peace I hadn't known war was brewing until the week he died. It was sudden, an undetected aneurysm. He collapsed in court. I was at home baking lemon bars for the boys. Emily called me from the hospital. He's gone, she said flatly. I'll send someone to pick up your things from the house. My knees gave out, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what happened next. After the funeral, I expected grief. I expected quiet. I expected my heart to feel like it had been scooped out and left somewhere unfamiliar. But what I didn't expect, what I never could have braced for, was how quickly Emily began to erase me from Nathan's life. The memorial was held 3 days after his death. Emily chose a high-end venue. I'd never been to some rooftop event space in the city, with a full catering staff and floral arrangements flown in from somewhere that required a passport. I wasn't involved in any of the planning, not even asked. At the memorial, my seat had no name tag. I stood by the doorway, holding a single framed photo of Nathan and me from his college graduation. When I went to place it on the memorial table, Emily gently blocked my hand. Oh, she said in that silky tone of hers, we're keeping this minimalist and modern. Just photos of him and the boys. She moved the frame aside like it was clutter. I looked around. Her parents were seated front row. Her colleagues stood around, sipping wine and patting her on the back. I was treated like a housekeeper who had wandered too far from the kitchen. Later that night, I returned to the garage behind the house, my temporary home of nearly 7 years, expecting silence, maybe sleep. But instead, I found a note taped to the garage door. Please refrain from entering the main house without texting first. The boys need consistency and structure. There was no signature, but I knew the handwriting. Emily's sharp italic slant. The door from the garage that once led to the kitchen locked. I knocked softly. No answer. I waited for the boys to come looking for me that weekend, like they always did. But they didn't. Monday morning, I saw them leaving for school through the frosted window, their faces pressed to iPads, their hands held by a nanny I'd never seen. I wasn't told her name. That week, Emily held a brunch with her firm. I saw the email from the catering company because it accidentally got sent to our shared old family address. I ironed my best dress. I thought maybe this is the moment she invites me in again, even just for appearances. So I walked to the house around 11 a.m., holding a tray of mini quiches I made from scratch. The door was open. Voices inside. Laughter. The clink of glasses. I stepped in. Oh, Emily saw me, eyes widening, not with joy, but surprise. I thought you'd be resting. Before I could say anything, she turned to a woman beside her. This is Audrey, she said lightly. She's... The woman who raised Nathan. She helps with the laundry. She's basically our live-in helper. Helper. I felt every pair of eyes turn toward me, some with pity, others with that polite, wealthy condescension you only ever see at garden parties and silent auctions. I left the tray on the counter untouched, walked out, my feet numb, my chest ice. Later that evening, I heard Emily laugh on the phone from the living room. No, she just showed up, like she was on the guest list or something. Then came the real blow. I went to the bank the next day to make sure my joint account with Nathan was still accessible for the mortgage I'd helped cover every month since he started law school. The teller looked at me apologetically. "I'm sorry, Ms. Campbell. The account has been closed." Closed. How I asked. He and I both. "The beneficiary designation was changed 3 months ago," she said. "Everything is now in Ms. Emily Campbell's name." She lowered her voice. "There was also a new will filed with our legal division. I'm afraid you're not listed." My mouth went dry. That night, I asked to speak with Emily. She stood in the doorway of the main house, arms folded. "What do you want to talk about? Did Nathan change his will?" I asked, my voice trembling. She didn't even blink. "Of course. He wanted to simplify things, but he promised me." My voice broke. "He said I'd always have a place, that he wanted the boys to have a piece of our family land. He changed his mind," she said curtly, "before he passed. Everything goes to me now. I'm his wife, Audrey, not you." Then she paused and with a tilted smile added, "And if you really loved him, you'd honor his last wishes and let things be." Let things be, like I was some fading shadow to be swept aside. Like I hadn't scraped my knees cleaning houses for a decade to keep that roof over his head. Like I hadn't sewn his prom suit by hand or stayed up nursing him through every childhood flu. I didn't respond. I walked back to the garage. And that night, as I sat at my tiny kitchen table staring at the will Nathan had supposedly signed without telling me, I realized something that made my blood run cold. The signature didn't look like his. The morning after I saw the will, I didn't sleep. I didn't even blink, I think. I sat with a copy of Nathan's real signature, an old birthday card, a tax form he'd asked me to co-sign once. I placed it next to the will. My fingers trembled. The loops of the N were off. The H didn't connect. He always had a precise signature, clean and strong. This one looked copied, rushed, as if someone had practiced it. I didn't want to believe what my gut was screaming. But when I looked at the date just 2 weeks before his accident, a week after he had told me I'm working on something for you and the boys, my stomach twisted. I walked outside. The air was thick, humid. Spring in the suburbs always feels heavier when something's wrong. A few days later came Mother's Day. It was always Nathan's favorite holiday. He'd send flowers, handwrite a letter, make breakfast himself if he was in town. Even after marrying Emily, he never missed a year. I dressed early just in case. Maybe the boys would come to the garage with a card. Maybe Emily would feel a tinge of guilt. At 9:00 a.m., a knock. I opened the door, heart thudding. There stood a delivery man with a long white box. To Audrey Campbell, he read off. From Ava. "Ava is my daughter, my only daughter. She lives in Austin with her husband. She hadn't visited in 3 years, but she always remembered Mother's Day." I smiled faintly and took the box. Inside was a single plastic flower. cheap, hollow, cold, with a note. For the woman who gave birth to me but didn't make time for my wedding. I sat down on the concrete floor. A laugh, half broken, half empty, escaped my lips. Ava had always been resentful. She never forgave me for staying in town when she moved away. I sent her money gifts called on holidays. But in the end, maybe Emily had whispered her poison far enough. Still holding the flower, I walked toward the main house. It was around 11:30 a.m. when I saw them all piling into a luxury SUV, Emily, her parents, and the boys. Luggage stacked in the trunk. The boys were smiling, wearing those tiny suits Nathan used to love putting on them for special occasions. I called out, "Where are you going?" Emily turned around, sunglasses perched high on her nose. "The boys are taking me on a cruise," she said. "From your daughter." I blinked. "Ava sent you a cruise?" Emily's smirk grew. She wanted to show appreciation. "She said I've done more mothering than you ever did." Then she leaned in, her voice just for me. "You got your little flower? Plastic suits you." The SUV pulled away. I stood there in my cardigan, holding that tacky, lifeless flower, watching the people I'd raised, loved, fed, and buried disappear down the road. It was raining by afternoon. I returned to the garage, sat by the dusty window, and for the first time since Nathan died, I sobbed. Ugly, body-shaking sobs. I cried for the boy I raised, for the Will I never saw coming, for the daughter who sent a dagger in a box, for the grandchildren who wouldn't know my laugh, my lasagna, my lullabies. And then I picked up the phone. There was only one person I could trust. Her name was Lorraine. We'd been friends since high school, lost touch after Nathan was born. She had moved to Arizona, married rich, divorced richer. The last time we spoke, I was folding laundry and she was flying to Venice. I dialed her old number. To my surprise, she answered. "Audrey?" Her voice was still crisp, the same hint of southern charm. "Lorraine," I whispered. "I think my son's will was forged." Silence. Then, with the same fire I remembered from senior year debate club, she said, "Tell me everything." I poured it out, every insult, every locked door, every paper I was denied. She didn't hesitate. "Fly out to me, stay as long as you need, and bring that will." I stared at the ceiling of the garage. For years I had allowed myself to be diminished, shrunk, made invisible. But now something cracked open. I wasn't just a forgotten mother. I wasn't a broken old woman in the garage. I was the one who gave life to a boy who built an empire. And someone rewrote that ending without my consent. I pulled out my suitcase, the same one Nathan bought me for my 60th birthday. It had never been used. I placed the plastic flower inside, as a reminder, and I started packing. Lorraine's home was nothing like mine. Marble floors, wide windows, the kind of silence money could buy. But when she opened the door and pulled me into a hug, it wasn't about wealth. It was about memory of who I once was before the silence took over my voice. She handed me a glass of tea and sat me down by her kitchen island. "Show me the will," she said simply. I pulled it from my bag, creased slightly damp from my nervous fingers. Lorraine examined it like a hawk. "This isn't just forged," she murmured. "It's stupidly done. No notary seal. Witnesses Emily's best friend and some contractor who does her nails. Audrey, this is amateur." My eyes filled. I didn't know where to start. "You just did," she said. "You came to me." Over the next few days, Lorraine introduced me to a retired probate attorney she played tennis with, Miriam Goldstein. Silver hair sharper than a blade. Miriam narrowed her eyes at the papers. This can be challenged, but quietly. For now we gather. It started slowly. I called Nathan's old assistant, Caleb. He had adored Nathan, worked with him for over a decade. He cried when I told him what happened. Audrey. I was there when Nathan discussed changing his will. He said he was adding you back in, that Emily had made things hard, but he didn't want to die with regrets. My chest ached. Do you know if he ever signed a new one? Caleb hesitated. I think he had an appointment with his lawyer the week he died. But Emily cancelled it. There it was, the shadow of the truth. Next, I found Nathan's original lawyer. He remembered me. He confirmed that Nathan was working on revisions and that something had seemed off when Emily came in alone to finalize everything. I recorded every call, took screenshots of every email. Lorraine helped me organize it all, put it in labeled folders, backed up on a USB drive and 2 cloud servers. But I didn't call Emily. I didn't call Ava. I didn't post on social media or confront them at the house. I stayed quiet, strategic. I watched. From Arizona, I followed public records. I saw Emily list one of Nathan's vintage cars for sale. I watched as she changed the name on several investment accounts. I even saw her parents' name appear on the deed of the home I once shared with my son. She was moving fast, too fast. One evening, I watched a video posted by my grandson's school, some fundraiser Emily had attended. I hit pause. At the moment, she smiled and shook hands with a man. His name tag was visible, financial planner. I searched the name, and there, it was a photo of Emily and this man from 6 months earlier, tagged at a private networking event, 6 months before Nathan's death. Lorraine and I stared at each other. She was planning something, I whispered. She wasn't grieving, Lorraine said coldly. She was replacing him. Still, I didn't act. I waited. I wanted her to think I had vanished, that I had gone away quietly like a bitter old ghost in the garage who'd finally given up. But in the shadows of Lorraine's home, between cups of tea and late-night calls to lawyers, I was building a case. I wasn't planning revenge. I was preparing justice, and each day the silence made me stronger. Each moment without confrontation gave me another inch of control. The garage may have once felt like a prison, but now, thousands of miles away from it, I realized I had escaped. And the woman who thought she erased me, she was about to learn what happens when you cross a mother who still has a voice. Lorraine set the table for 3, not with dinner, but with documents. She laid out timelines, notarized letters, audio recordings transcribed and highlighted. It was like preparing a battlefield, not with swords, but with facts. I've called him, I said, holding my phone. He's coming. It had taken everything in me to dial Ava's number. His voice was tired, cautious. But he agreed. Maybe curiosity won over loyalty, or maybe deep down he needed answers too. When the doorbell rang, my knees almost buckled. He walked in with his shoulders stiff and eyes guarded. Emily followed uninvited, as radiant as ever, dressed like she had nothing to fear. "This better not be about money, Audrey," she said the moment she sat. "We've been grieving." Grieving? I nodded slowly and opened a folder. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to present some things." Ava, this is Nathan's handwriting from 3 weeks before he died. He was planning to revise his will. He told Caleb. He cancelled the appointment because Emily told him to wait. Emily scoffed. That's a ridiculous accusation. He changed the will himself. He didn't, I said quietly, sliding forward a signed statement from the lawyer. He never came in. And this, I placed another paper. This is the notary registry. There is no record of Nathan signing anything the day your copy claims. And these are the so-called witnesses, a nail technician and Emily's college roommate. Neither were present. Ava looked at Emily. She laughed. This is pathetic. You dragged us across the country for your little fantasy. You're just mad you got cut out. Lorraine leaned forward. Actually, it's more than fantasy. We've submitted a formal request for a forensic analysis of the signature, and the court has opened a preliminary review. Emily's jaw twitched. I didn't need her confession. Her silence, sudden hollow, was loud enough. Ava rubbed his forehead. Is this true, Emily? Did you change the will? She didn't answer. She stood up. This is insane. This woman has always hated me. Of course she'd say something like this now that Nathan's gone. Ava stood too, but his hands were trembling. You said the will was clean. You said there was no need to go to the lawyer again because everything was handled before the accident. I protected what was ours. The words slipped out before she realized. Ours, Ava asked. I looked at my son. I didn't cry. Not now. You don't have to believe me, I said. But the evidence is there. Whether you look at it or not is up to you. Emily moved toward the door. This isn't over. You're going to regret dragging our name through the mud. I didn't flinch. Actually, Lorraine replied, you're the one who should be concerned. Forging a legal document is a felony. You didn't just disrespect Audrey. You violated federal law. Emily's eyes darted toward Ava, but he didn't look back. She left. Silence fell. And for the first time since Nathan's funeral, my son sat beside me, head bowed. I didn't know, he said quietly. I swear, I didn't know. I nodded. I believe you. He looked at me then, at the pile of documents. Do you really want to go to court? I hesitated, then answered with what I knew to be true. I want what's right, not for money, not for vengeance, but because Nathan deserved better, and I deserve to be seen. Ava didn't speak for a while. When he finally did, he said something I never thought I'd hear again. Tell me what you need me to do. The next morning, the fog outside the window was thick, but not as heavy as the weight that had lifted from my chest. I hadn't slept much, but I didn't need rest. I needed resolve. By midday, I was at the bank. For years, almost 2 decades, I had quietly funded things. Repairs, school fees, mortgage top-ups. A new car here, a business investment there. All in Nathan's name. All handled through joint trust accounts we had created back when he asked me to help them stay afloat until they could. I thought I was building something for my family. Turns out, I was just enabling someone else's empire. I asked the banker, an older woman named Sheila, I'd known since my working days, to help me initiate the separation of all joint assets I still had authority over. She blinked. You sure, Audrey? I've never been more sure, I said. I transferred the remainder of the legacy trust, the one that came from my late husband's company shares, into a separate account under a newly created Audrey J. Wilson Foundation. It was time the money started serving a purpose greater than being siphoned into handbags and cruises. From there, I instructed my lawyer to file a formal motion freezing any additional withdrawals tied to the contested will, and I called the management company that oversaw the duplex I'd co-signed. I want my name off the lease. I want out of any responsibility for Unit B. There was a long pause. You do understand that they may not be able to continue without your portion of the mortgage. I understand perfectly. Click. Each step I took that week was surgical. I called the private school where Emily had recently enrolled my granddaughter, Ruby, boasting about excellence and networking opportunities. I had paid the deposit, not any more. I called and politely withdrew the funding. They'll need to make new arrangements, I said gently but firmly. The blowback came 3 days later. Emily's voice rang through my voicemail like a siren. How dare you touch Ruby's education? You spiteful, bitter woman, do you want her to suffer because you have some vendetta against me? Then another. You've cut the car note. The trust fund is frozen. Ava said you moved the foundation money. Who do you think you are? I didn't respond. I just sat with a cup of tea and let the silence speak for me. Even Ava, for all his apologies, struggled when I told him I would no longer be paying for his home insurance or legal retainers. But Mom, you know they're not working right now. I know, I said. And now they'll learn how to. He didn't argue. He didn't agree either. But that's the thing about reclaiming power, it doesn't wait for permission. I wasn't punishing them. I was just done being the silent lifeline. Let them sell the Range Rover. Let them downsize the house. Let them figure out for once how to stand on their own. And just like that, the woman they once called Sweet Audrey became the one they whispered about behind closed doors. She's finally snapped. She's cutting them off. She's out for revenge. No, I wasn't out for revenge. I was out for justice, and my son's memory demanded it. The silence in my cottage was different now. It was no longer filled with sorrow. It was filled with space room to think, breathe, and rebuild. The first few days after I cut financial ties were quiet, tense, but quiet. No one called to ask how I was. Not Emily, not Ava, not even little Ruby, though I knew that wasn't her fault. And that's when it struck me. All these years, the only time they checked in was when there was a string attached, a mortgage payment, a bill, an errand. Without strings, I was invisible. But I wasn't broken. I was finally free. That morning, I dusted off a sketch pad that had been buried under cookbooks in my hall closet. Years ago, before marriage, before motherhood, I'd studied architecture. I used to draw little cottages, dream homes by the sea. I hadn't drawn in decades. Now I couldn't stop. Each line I traced was a step back to myself. By week's end, I'd taken a bus to the local community arts centre and signed up for a class, Creative Home Design for Beginners. Most students were in their 20s, but they welcomed me warmly. A young woman named Tessa leaned over one day as I carefully outlined a blueprint of a sun-drenched garden studio. "This is incredible," she said. "Are you an architect?" "Not anymore," I replied with a smile. But maybe again. Her encouragement sparked something in me. That night, I logged onto a freelance design site. After an hour of trying to remember my old portfolio login, I started fresh uploading new sketches, offering small layout consultations. Within a week, someone hired me to design a backyard guest house. Then another. Then a woman from Oregon asked if I could help her convert her garage into a mini studio for her aging mother. That one hit home. I took it for free. As I worked, I received news from my lawyer. The court had accepted our request to question the validity of the new will. Emily's panic, they said, was beginning to show delays, inconsistencies. Even the notary she claimed witnessed it couldn't be located. It was a matter of time now. Still, I didn't wait around the phone for updates. I had lunches with Linda, my childhood friend, who'd come back into my life like a warm spring wind. We shared stories, laughter, even old photos from when we were just girls who hadn't yet been shaped by sacrifice. "You look lighter," she told me. "I feel heavier," I laughed, with clarity. We started taking morning walks by the lake, talking about possibly renting a cabin for a month. 2 women, 2 lives, no demands. Just a quiet rebellion. And one night, sitting under the soft glow of a reading lamp, I found a letter I'd never mailed. It was one I wrote to Ava on the night of his wedding, filled with dreams, hopes, and a single warning. Always protect what matters. If you ever forget where you come from, you might lose where you're going. He never read it, but I did. And now it read like a prophecy. That evening I made a decision. I opened a new savings account. Not for them, not for Ruby, not for Ava. For me. To travel, to live, to dream. For the first time in 40 years, I wasn't someone's mother, someone's wife, someone's provider. I was just Audrey, and Audrey was just getting started. The letter from my lawyer came on a Thursday, thick, heavy, with words I both dreaded and needed to see. The court has reviewed evidence indicating that the will in question may be fraudulent. Preliminary ruling suggests a full investigation is warranted. Until then, all assets are frozen. I stared at those lines in stunned silence. Emily couldn't touch the accounts, the house, even the jewelry she'd quietly moved into her safe deposit box. It was the first ripple, and I knew the wave was coming. Linda found me on the porch, the envelope in one hand, an untouched cup of tea in the other. "Now what?" she asked gently. And I knew the answer. For months, no years, I had endured being erased in my own son's home. I had been patient, silent, forgiving. But there was a moment when forgiveness starts to feel like permission. I looked up. "I'm going to fight for what's mine," I said. And I'm suing my son." Linda didn't flinch. She nodded, even as her face dimmed with the weight of it. "It's going to hurt. It already does." The next morning, I stood in a small, sunlit office across from my attorney. A kind older man named Gerald, who wore suspenders and spoke as if every word was being weighed. "I just want to be clear, Audrey," he said. "If we proceed, if you file this lawsuit, you're not just challenging the will. You're putting Ava in the crossfire. You're saying he let this happen. He might have known." "I know," I replied, "and I want it on the record." With a stroke of a pen, I filed a civil lawsuit naming Ava and Emily in a formal petition. Intentional deceit and unjust enrichment via fraudulent alteration of testamentary intent. I didn't even know those words existed before, but now they were my shield and my sword. The reaction came swiftly. Emily went on a rampage, publicly accusing me of senility, greed, and desperation. She posted veiled messages on social media about toxic elders who think money equals love. Ava didn't post anything, but he didn't call either. That silence, it pierced deeper than all the lies. Neighbors whispered. Some supported me quietly. Others stepped away. Church members looked uncomfortable during Sunday service. One even asked if I was really okay in the head. I smiled politely. Perfectly okay. Just tired of being quiet. A reporter called, having caught wind of the case from a court clerk. Would you like to give a statement? He asked. I thought about it. Then I said yes. I looked directly into the camera lens and spoke not as a mother, not as a widow, but as a woman reclaiming her voice. I didn't ask for this war, I said, but I won't apologize for surviving it. There's a difference between love and manipulation, and I know which one I gave. The story went viral in pockets forums, women's rights pages, elder advocacy groups. Some called me a hero. Others said I was cruel for taking legal action against my own blood. But every woman who whispered to me at the grocery store or left a handwritten note in my mailbox, they all said the same thing. Thank you for speaking when we couldn't. Still, I wondered, did I go too far? Late one night, Ruby's school counselor emailed me. She said Ruby had been quiet, distant. When asked about her grandmother, she looked away and said, she doesn't want me anymore. That broke me. I hadn't realized the price Ruby was paying for her mother's deceit and my truth. I sat in the dark, holding a picture Ruby drew last Christmas of our old backyard, of her and me in the garden. A sun that looked like a yellow crown hung above us. Maybe I hadn't gone too far. Maybe I hadn't gone far enough. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting for my memory, for the truth of who I had been in their lives before Emily decided to rewrite it all. Was I wrong? I whispered into the dark. Was I too proud? Too late? Too cold? Or was this what boundaries looked like when drawn in firm, permanent ink? The courthouse was emptier than I expected. No reporters, no cameras, just one elderly bailiff and the echo of my heels against the marble as I stepped into the hearing room. I wasn't expecting Ava to show up, but he did. His eyes caught mine as he entered, holding a stack of papers, looking 10 years older than he had 6 months ago. A man torn not just by family, but by the quiet, crushing guilt of absence. Emily wasn't there. Her lawyer claimed medical fatigue. The truth was, she had nothing else left to say that wouldn't unravel under oath. Ava sat across from me. Neither of us spoke. The judge entered, and the motions began. My lawyer presented the timeline, my son's original will, the verified alterations after his illness. Emily's proximity to the notary, the late-night visits to the lawyer's office, ones Ava hadn't known about. When Gerald revealed the audio recording, a muffled but chilling confession from Emily, bragging to her sister about fixing the will, the courtroom went still. Ava flinched. He looked at me for the first time in full, not as an adversary, not as a shameful reminder of what he failed to protect, but as his mother. After the hearing outside the courthouse, Ava approached, hesitant, weathered. I didn't know, he said. I swear to you, Mom. I didn't know she changed it. I believed him, but that didn't undo what was done. I wasn't angry that I wasn't in the will, I said. I was angry that I was erased, that your daughter was told I didn't matter, that everything I gave could be rewritten without consequence. He stood there silent. He had no defense. But he had a question. Is there any way back from this? I didn't answer him directly. Instead, I pulled from my purse a sealed envelope. My final offer, I said. It's not about money. Open it when you're ready. Inside was a letter and a copy of my newly created will. It left half my estate to Ruby, with one condition: she would receive it when she turned 21, not before. Not under anyone's guardianship, not under her mother's name. And the rest, it was to be donated to a non-profit that built intergenerational housing for widows and single mothers. I built this life with love, I told Ava. And I want love to be what it funds, even if I never set foot in your house again. He nodded. I walked away, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Weeks passed. The case settled quietly. Emily's name was officially removed as executor. The forged version of the will was nullified. She didn't go to jail, but she did lose her standing in the community, her leverage, and her false narrative. I sold the old house, the one I had paid for, moved into a cozy one-bedroom near a lake where the breeze smelled of pine and freedom. I planted herbs on the windowsill and wrote letters I never sent to Ruby. Then one day I opened the door to find a familiar face on the porch. Ruby, now a teenager taller than I remembered, but still with the same shy eyes. She didn't speak at first, just held out a drawing, me in the garden again, the yellow crown above our heads. I found it in your old room, she said softly. I never forgot. I took the drawing with trembling hands. I'm sorry about what happened, she added. Dad told me. You didn't do anything wrong, I whispered. I know, she said, but I want to know you again. And just like that, the thing I thought was gone returned, not perfectly, not painlessly, but purely. Hope. As she stepped inside, I realized something: I had lost a house, but not myself. I had surrendered a title, but reclaimed a voice. I had walked alone, but never without purpose. So when Ruby curled beside me on the couch and asked, "Why did you fight back?" I smiled and said, "Because sometimes silence is the most dangerous inheritance we leave behind. I didn't choose the house. I chose not to be erased. I'm Audrey Wilson, and I've returned." Have you ever felt like a ghost in the very home you helped build? Have you ever poured your heart, time, and savings into a family, only to be written out, replaced, or quietly erased? Tell me, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have stayed silent? Would you have walked away? Or would you have stood up and said, "This ends with me. I want to hear your story"? Leave a comment below. Tell me your name and where you're watching from. Let the world know that your voice matters too. Because somewhere, someone else is watching and realizing they're not alone. Type your city and your thoughts down below. Let's start a conversation that no one can rewrite. And if you want to hear how my story continues, or how others like me fought back and one, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss what comes next.